Welcome to the Persistence Project, where we talk about all things strength training from mindset to max effort. I'm your host, Rob Allen. I'm a strength coach and a multiply powerlifter, and I love learning about why other coaches, athletes, and practitioners do what they do. This podcast is proudly brought to you by Jacked and Juiced Apparel, who provide awesome training apparel and have been sponsoring strength sports and competitions since 2022. Make sure you go to the link in the bio and check out the awesome apparel that they have. And East Coast Supplements in Dubbo are also a sponsor, and check out their links in the bio. So today on the podcast, we have Jess Wright, formerly Sewastenko, who is a elite level powerlifter, who has a best total of 436 in the under 58 kilo class. In sleeves, she has squatted 160 in competition, benched 91, and deadlifted 196. She is number 2 all time in sleeves in Australia by total, and number 1 by dots. In 2020, she moved into weightlifting, where she took a bunch of state records and has a best snatch of 77 kilos, a best clean and jerk of 97 kilos, and a total of 174 in the under 59 kilo class, which at the time qualified her for the Commonwealth Games. She is a former strength coach. She's a current physiotherapist, practicing physiotherapist, and a physiotherapist for the Paralympic Powerlifting Team. She's currently training for the City to Surf Fun Run to raise money for the Alopecia Areata support group in New South Wales and to prove that powerlifters can run. Jess, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Rob.
So where I like to start these is talking about what got you into the gym initially. So going through some of my research over the last couple of days, I've noticed that you're a pretty sporty person. Has that always been the case?
Yeah, 100%. I don't know what it is about growing up, but my parents were pretty sedentary people, not heaps sporty. My brother, the same thing, not an awfully sporty family, but I just found a lot of fun in just going out and running or playing footy.
Yeah.
Loved, I'm a big Parramatta Eels supporter, so I've always loved my footy from kindergarten, was always in blue and yellow. And yeah, I don't know, it was something about just always liking to be outdoors and playing sports and being around other people. And yeah, I guess it just carried over to when I grew up and I just kept that going.
Yeah. So when did you initially get into the gym then?
The gym was a bit later. The gym probably wasn't until probably when I started uni. So my first degree was an exercise science degree.
Yep.
And from there, we were kind of forced into, you got to practice what you preach. You got to know, how to go in the gym, how to move. And that probably gave me a bit of initiative to want to go in and learn a little bit about what to do in the gym. And that would have been 2012.
Yep.
So we're looking at over 10 years ago now. But that doesn't seem that long ago, I guess, compared to everything else before then that happened.
Yeah. So when you first got into the gym, how did your training look and what kind of tickled your fancy, I guess, when you first started training? What
Cool.
led you down the path that you inevitably went on?
I started off just in your classic, the uni gym, and then a Snap Fitness equivalent. I met my partner at uni in my first year, so I used to tag along with him for a bit of confidence. So I'd go in and start with the machines, he'd do a lap pull down, and then while he's having a break, I'd jump in and he'd be coaching me through it. And it started pretty basic with that sort of stuff. I had a friend in the exercise science degree who actually was a powerlifter at the time with Powerlifting Australia, which back in 2012, 13, it was pretty rare to find someone competing back then in powerlifting compared to today. And yeah, he was talking to me about it, and seeing him lift was pretty cool. And knowing as competitive as I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. I reckon I could try that.
Yeah.
And just started doing those movements more when I was at uni. So tried to learn how to squat, bench, deadlift. Pretty bad at them when we all start. But yeah, started being more intrigued by it. But yeah, didn't compete for a while after that. Just tried to learn the ropes and enjoy the movement.
And for me, when I first started training, I kind of fell in love with the deadlift. I think a lot of people fall in love with the deadlift, but what was there a lift of the 3 lifts in powerlifting that really kind of took you into the world of wanting to compete?
I'm not too sure. I don't think there was ever one lift. I know when I first started benching, as every female usually does, hated benching. I remember looking at a girl benching 40 kilos in the gym when, I was in there one day and thinking, holy crap, that's a lot of weight. That's really cool. I want to do that.
Yeah.
And, when you first start out and you get that neural shake on the bar, and I remember, just having the bar, the 20 kilos, and it just shaking all the way down for months and months. And that was definitely a lift I always wanted to put more weight on the bar. And I found that a really rewarding lift. But yeah, I loved all 3, and I think that's why I got into it.
And so you started competing in 2016?
Yeah, I think that was my first comp.
Yeah.
Yep.
So you went straight into sanction. Did you do any novice comps or anything like that?
No novice comp. So after I finished up with uni, I wound up in Canberra in 2016, and I was training at the Institute of Sport there in Canberra. I had a postgrad position there, so we had free access to the gym. So I've never had that kind of luxury of having that free facility and like big, awesome facilities as well. And I remember just Googling more about like, what's powerlifting. I've heard you can do competitions. Remembered my friend back in the day who did some. And I thought I'm going to look into this a little bit more. And my competitive brain kind of went straight to the record page. And I thought, what have I got to be lifting to be competitive in this sport? And funny enough, like Liz Craven's name would pop up. You know, she's got all the records for all the weight categories that'd be around me. And I thought, oh, she lives in Canberra. So I remember picking up the phone and sending her a message and saying, hey, do you coach? And I thought, what better way to get into it than to have the woman I probably want to beat down the track coach me and go from there. So.
Which down the track you did beat her?
Yeah, eventually we got there in some aspects. Yep.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And you're still friends to this day, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, we talk pretty informally. So yeah, we've always kept in touch, and yeah, it's always been an awesome relationship with her. Yeah.
And so so you competed pretty extensively really through 2016 to 2020.
Yep.
And got to, as I said in the intro, a pretty high level. What did your trajectory look like once you got into the gym and started taking it seriously? Like, did you see gains come pretty quickly?
Yeah, it happened. I think when it's tricky to think about the competition period because on my first competition I was already quite strong. Like I did train for a long time before I did my first comp, and that wasn't intentional. Some people will put it off intentionally and be a bit worried, but it was more I didn't have access to, you know, those sort of competitions living in Bathurst for uni. So it wasn't until I got to Canberra I saw that there were competitions around and I had that environment and the coaches available.
Yeah.
But I don't know. When I started off, I think my first comp, I dropped down to like being a 63 kilo lifter. I put on a bit of weight living in Canberra, just going out a lot, eating out a lot, and cut down to 63 back then. And I think I squatted 135, bench 70, and deadlifted 160. So they weren't bad numbers as a 63, but for a first comp on the higher end. And it just meant, I guess, as I progressed those next couple of years, it didn't probably look as substantial of an increase as, you know, you look at a lot of other people starting out with their first comps. But I think like for me, I just took a tipping point where I really showed my capabilities sort of that 2018, 19. And 2019 was definitely my best calendar comp year to date.
So 2019 is when you went to, I can't remember where, but you represented Australia in China.
Yep.
Right. I knew
that's it.
I had Singapore, but that was for weightlifting. You went, and that was with World Powerlifting, which is what Powerlifting Australia is. That's the federation that is the world representative of Powerlifting Australia. And so you represented Australia there.
Yep.
And how was that? Was that your first time competing overseas?
Yeah, it was actually. So that's my first international comp. At that time, like you just mentioned, it was the world affiliate just while there was no APU at the time. It was where PA had just been withdrawn from the world stage, which was a real kick in the guts considering that was kind of where every lifter's trying to work towards. And that was the year for me, and it seemed to be the year it got cut. But WP also was like awesome enough they could have events happening, and China was a pretty cool experience. It was a really good learning curve, and I think down the track helped me with my weightlifting travel because you don't take into consideration like what travel time does to you. Trying to cut weight when you're traveling. 2019, I made the decision to start cutting from 63 down to 57, and I was already quite lean at 63 at that back end, so it was a big cut, and adding that to travel and juggling humidity over there and the different food over there, it was a really good learning curve.
Yeah. And what were some of the kind of biggest things that you took away from that experience of cutting weight and training?
It was hard. I probably didn't mind the food. I could always starve myself if I needed to and like do what I needed to do, and that wouldn't impact me. But it was the hydration, and I'd always water load, never impacted me. And it was just funny when I got over there, it was just 40-degree heat, you know, ridiculous humidity, and doing a water load and not being able to rehydrate quick enough. It had never impacted me like that, like it had over there, and I just noticed it. And I think it took me about 3.5 hours to give my drug test at the end of it because I just couldn't get anything out. I was just so dehydrated. But yeah, it was a good learning curve.
And you set some records at that competition for WP?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. So I think currently with WP, I have the total and the deadlift world record.
Yep.
So over there, I set the total, I believe. The deadlift I'd already had before then.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you've done a comp since then. In 2020, you went back into APU.
No, so I never actually competed. So my last comp was China. So
Oh,
it was
that's right.
2019. I never formally registered in APU, and when they started up, and to be honest, I felt like 2019 at the end of that, I'd a few different reasons, but just wanted a bit of a change. And yeah, that's kind of 2020 was my weightlifting year.
Yeah. So through that whole experience, you were with Powerlifting Australia the whole time.
Yeah.
And you said it was a kick in the guts when they were withdrawn from the IPF. Obviously, there's a lot of drama around that. How did that go with the people that wanted to stay or wanted to move on and wanted that pathway to the IPF? Like, what was that like for you, considering you're on that kind of trajectory?
It's pretty tricky to juggle. Like you, at that point, we didn't have an option with APU. Like when that was all kind of going down, and you were just kind of told, look, you won't be going to Worlds, and this is instead the pathway. As an athlete, I'd like to think I'm pretty good at not getting too caught up with the politics. So I was kind of just like, head down, tell me what I got to do, and I'll do it. And just started focusing more on the numbers instead of the competition itself. And I think that really paid dividends at the back end before I finished up. But it's just one of those things that if you can't control it, there's no point getting worked up about it. And yeah, just sort of come to terms with it's not the be all end all to go there. The numbers are probably the more important thing. So yeah.
I think that's a good way to look at it, given that powerlifting federations are so full of drama.
No, they just don't end.
It's not limited to Powerlifting Australia and APU in Australia. We all have drama, whether it's the tested or untested feds. There's lots of stuff going on, and the more that it's put out there on social media, the more people are kind of seeing behind the curtain and seeing how the strings are pulled, and it's like, oh, well, it's not always pretty.
No, absolutely.
Sometimes it's best just to focus on yourself.
And it's all sports too, right? It's not just powerlifting, it's any sport. You have politics and you have things that don't happen your way. And I think the best athletes just put their head down and do what they're told. So yeah.
Yeah, just focus on performance.
100%.
I think it's like when anything's like growing and there's lots of money involved, there's going to be definitely disgruntled people and definitely bad decisions made that impact a lot more people than just the people that are making the decisions. It was certainly unfortunate to watch. I never competed in Powerlifting Australia, but I came up, learnt from Wilkes and did the coaching course through Powerlifting Australia and had quite a lot to do with it initially, and then decided that I really wanted to squat and wraps and out of a monolift and all that. So I went a different direction, but I've always been invested in that world. And it was a shame to see what happened with that affiliation. But he took it and ran with it with World Powerlifting. It seemed to do well.
Yeah.
Was it a big comp?
Yeah, it did for a long time. Like the WP and even the PA events just on that back end before APU were always big, awesome comps, like really well structured. I give them full credit. I think, there's a lot of good stuff by the sounds of it coming out of APA, but, the PA days, you just remember them being very structured, great equipment, very well resourced. I think that comes down to finances a lot of the time and just someone who knows what they're doing for a long time. Something that we miss, I know, from the PA days where, those festivals and you go to the expos and you get that opportunity to be showcased and feel like you're invited to something pretty important. And I do feel like for a long time powerlifting missed that, where everything split up a bit, and it's really a shame not to have everyone together anymore. But at the end of the day, again, you've just got to focus on your numbers, and you can now go on open powerlifting and compare yourself to whoever you want. So pretty cool.
You can put any filter, any variation of filter on there and become the best in the world.
Exactly.
Sometimes you can't, but I must say I tried numerous different filters on yours, and one of the interesting ones that by coefficient, and we'll just use dots. I know you guys use Wilkes a lot in that world, but dots is probably a bit more common across federations now. Mm-hmm. You were number 8 in Australia all time in sleeves at under 60, tested or untested, which is a testament to your strength there, because that's against people who are not natural, and they're very strong and very impressive. So number 8 all time in Australia.
That's pretty cool.
Tested or untested, I think that's very impressive. So powerlifting kind of ended in 2019 for you, and you moved to weightlifting. Mm-hmm. What did that change? What precipitated that change?
There were a couple of things. I think obviously all the politics with the powerlifting side of things. I did an international WP event in China. It was like a FIBO expo over there, and that was awesome. But at that point for me, that was the ceiling for the sport. There wasn't an IPF world. There wasn't anything else really. I know this sounds pretty grim, but nothing really to work towards in terms of a competition to look forward to at the time. So just found it like it was going to be a bit of a stale period without a competition for a while, and was just considering different types of training to keep myself interested in the gym. And as we can all appreciate, it gets pretty boring squat, benching and deadlifting when you've been doing it for a long time. And I've always tried to have good variety in my training, and even dating back to when I first started, I used to get a lot of crap about, you're a powerlifter, why are you front squatting, why are you overhead pressing? And it's just for, it's good to be sometimes generally not specialized all the time.
Yeah.
Come out of those general prep phases and do something different. And I think for me, I just wanted something different. My coach through powerlifting was Dean Storm. He's a guy that lives pretty local here. And I just remember having a chat with him and saying, I'm not sure if I'm loving it as much as I used to. I'm a bit bored,
Yep.
want a bit of a change. And the other thing too, my back and my body were just feeling it. And the back end of 2019, I was pulling 200 plus sort of on a weekly basis. And I just felt like a curled up ball. It's nothing that could move. And I just thought, for how old I was at the time and how fit I was used to feeling, it just didn't feel right for me. And
Sure.
it's something I see in the clinic all the time these days too, is you just work so hard with so much weight on that bar.
Mm-hmm.
Your body just ends up a ball and you just feel so stiff and not mobile. So I remember I caught up with a guy at the time. So Simon Bergner was my weightlifting coach and still a very good friend, and I coached with him for the Paralympics.
Yes.
But he sort of reached out when I was powerlifting about Samtech, which is obviously a distributor for equipment and for calibrated weights in Oceania. And he initially was sponsoring me as a powerlifter. And I remember I was saying to him off the record, I'm a bit bored, what can we do? And he said, you know what, like I'm an equipped lifter, come down to Wollongong and just chuck some wraps on and a suit and let's see if you like that.
Yeah.
Let's try something different. And I got down there and I hated it. Yeah. I absolutely hated it. I love pain. I don't mind pain, but I thought this is awful. I'm not doing this on a regular basis. I'm leaving this sport to get out of this sort of thing. And I remember we squatted in wraps, had a bench shirt on, I benched worse, had a deadlift suit on, deadlift worse. And I thought, nah, hate it, not patient. And we just finished up and he had some weightlifting stuff there. And I said, oh, can we just have a throw with that instead? That looks like fun. I've never done that before. And he was like, yeah, let's do it. Let's just do some snatches and some cleans. And we were throwing around like very little weight, but it was just really fun. Like it was a fast movement. It was something I sucked at, but it didn't hurt and it was enjoyable. And I don't know, just from there, I sort of chat to him more and more about it. And I said, what can we do with weightlifting? I'm pretty competitive. I'm pretty bored. Like can put my, sort of eggs into that basket for a change and see what happens. And he just said, well, it's 2019. It was, I think, December of that year. So coming into 2020, in 2 years, you've got, Birmingham Commonwealth Games. Like, what do you reckon? And I thought, like, that's a pretty cool goal to have. Like, that sounds cooler than IPF Worlds. And he just said, like, as a, to be a weightlifter, it doesn't happen overnight. It's going to take time. It'll be a push. It's not unrealistic, but it's going to be bloody hard. What do you reckon? And we just I think for 12 months after that, kept it pretty quiet. That was our aspiration with it. But we just wanted to, spend 12 months getting really good at the movements. And as I did more weightlifting, my body just felt so much better, so much quicker. It just felt so different and I fell in love with it.
Yeah. I think like one of the good takeaways from that whole point is that you're following what keeps you enthusiastic about training. And so many people get bogged down in that, like I identify as this person or this lifter or this specific genre within strength sports.
Yeah.
That's me. And they beat it like a dead horse and just go and go and go until they break. And it's like, just remember why you got into it.
Yeah.
Like you found it fun. So keep chasing the fun and you're going to get better results.
Like you just said, they break or they start hating it, know, and it's disheartening to see that. And I know I still love powerlifting to this day because I didn't do that. And I have that conversation with a lot of my clients in the clinic who are in pain all the time, who vocalize they're not enjoying training. And I go, what are you doing it for? You can come back to it. It's not going anywhere, but go try something different. Come back. And I think it is a big thing where a lot of people do identify as like, I'm a power lifter though, this is my sport and it's okay to step away and then come back to that. You don't have to beat yourself, like you said, to the ground and then hate it and then have no choice.
But you didn't build it overnight. So you're not going to lose it overnight too. If you take 6 months off or even if you just took 6 months off training, full stop, you probably wouldn't lose all your strength.
Away.
I've just had a client do that recently and he was surprised. He's like, my body's sore because it's not used to training, but my strength's still there. He's like, I thought I would have lost all of it. I'm like, no, it doesn't really work like that. It took you a long time to build it. It doesn't just go overnight.
No.
But if you're hating it, like, take a break.
100%. And like distance makes the love grow fonder, right? So you go away for a bit, you come back and you start to love it again.
And you might realize, like you did, that that's not the path I want to go down.
Yep, exactly.
So you got into the weightlifting and it was kind of not necessarily love at first sight, but once you started to master the movements a little bit, you were like, I think I can be good at this. How realistic did that Commonwealth Games qualification look? in 2020 when you started to get kind of proficient?
Oh, not at all.
Yeah.
Not at all. I debatably look like a weightlifter now as it is still, compared to the guys that have been doing it for 10 plus years.
Yeah.
It's a sport. It's an art. It just takes time.
Yeah.
Like it's not anything like powerlifting. It's not like you go out and you just lift as much as you can and you can get away with, technically not being efficient. Like if you can't proficiently get that bar overhead into a snatch position, you're not going to snatch. So it took a lot of time and a lot of investment in doing movements that I hadn't spent a lot of time in before. So a lot of overhead squat positions, a lot of, front rack positions. A lot of powerlifters can't get into clean positions, and I couldn't when I started either. And it was a lot of frustration with that taking time. And just had to appreciate time was just going to be something we had to just be patient with because it wasn't going to happen overnight. The first year, yeah, it definitely didn't come overnight. And I think I still look back at videos where I'm catching snatches in power positions and thinking I'm getting so low and my torso is like horizontal to the ground because I just didn't have that thoracic mobility. And I think and I'm seeing more powerlifters now actually transition over to weightlifting, and a few of them like stick with it, which is so awesome to see. And a few of them just get the shits with it and move on because it is a really hard transition. It's a different sport. But probably like for Commonwealth Games, it wasn't realistic until it got really close. I was competing in a weight category for a long time, 59, and it was really competitive. So it was a perfect weight category for me because I'd sit at 60 kilos on the regular, so it wasn't much of a cut. But the category just had girls in it that were just that bit stronger or had been doing it that bit longer. And when it got to the qualifying competitions and you only can send one person per weight category, no matter how good you all are, you kind of start crunching the numbers and go, this isn't going to be as, probably feasible as what we thought. And when I guess it coming into, I'm trying to get my years right, end of 2021, our national event was our last sort of like qualifier into who would be sent to Singapore to see who qualifies. And I remember I placed third, and the top sort of two girls were going to compete to see who could go to Singapore to qualify. And I just remember I was way off the two of them and thought, there's one local comp left in a month. It was in November, and you could get a qualifying total by November this date to go to Singapore. So nationals wasn't the last opportunity to qualify with a total. And so I finished nationals really disappointed because it wasn't the highest number. These girls were always going to beat me. But I remember looking down the weight class under, it was the 55s. So it was another 4 kilos lighter. I said to Simon, like, we're not going to Birmingham as a 59. The only way this happens is as a 55. Like, there's no one in the weight category who's even close. Similar to powerlifting, you have minimum qualifying totals. In weightlifting, they're really competitive. It's not like if you don't meet it, they don't send someone. And it was quite a high total, but it was much more realistic than I wasn't going to get sent as a 59. So we actually made, I was 60 at the time. We cut 5 kilos off in the matter of 4 weeks, which was hard. I did a DEXA a week out and I was 9% body fat. We got down low, but it was kind of an all or nothing kind of thing. I put all the eggs in that basket and said, this is my last probably major international competition for a while, so let's go for it. And every comp we don't get to, that'll probably be the last, so enjoy it. And yeah, we turned up to this comp 54.9 or whatever and lifted to the kilo what we needed miraculously. And yeah, from there we could, move on. So it was only that we were forced into that direction that it looked realistic at that point. I always felt like I was kind of behind in the lead up of those other girls. Yeah,
well, still being pretty new to it when you look at the kind of the journey of weightlifters. Often they start a lot younger.
100%.
It's a long sport where you reach the pinnacle when you're 10 years, 15 years in kind of thing. It's like, I think powerlifting is like that too, but not in its current culture. Like a lot of people look at it as a short term. Like, I want to get to the top in 3 years. It's like, Jesus, like, how about you just build a base for 3 years and then, get stronger? Like, I'm guilty of it too. I started training and competed really soon, but I always looked at it as like, I want to be doing this for 10, 15 years. So I'm going to do it the smart way.
Yeah.
But when you're up against that kind of field of competitors, it would be very daunting. How did the strength go when you cut down that much? Because you lean as all get out already, and you're cutting 5 kilos.
Another 5, yeah. It's hard. Like, I mean, to be honest, if you talk to anyone who knew me back in 2019 in powerlifting, like I cut to 57 and 58 for a long time from 60, 61 as a powerlifter. And I was probably one of the luckier ones or the better ones with weight cuts. I cut down because I maintained strength. I got stronger when I cut weight with powerlifting. My numbers as a 63 were much worse compared to my 57, 58 numbers. And I just felt stronger when I was lighter as a powerlifter. My squat would go down a little bit, but my deadlifts and my bench, there was just something about that leverage that I got an advantage over being that little bit lighter in those positions where I don't know if it was mentally I had to work harder for it. So mentally I put in more for it, or I just felt like I was in tighter positions. But as a powerlifter, I'd cut really well. And then when it came around to weightlifting, I just kind of assumed the same would happen. It wouldn't be as, it wouldn't affect my strength much. And to be honest with weightlifting, for me, it wasn't a strength sport because the strength was always there. I could always clean the weight. I could always squat it up. I could always stand the snatch up. It was the technical, like maintaining that technical efficiency when it got heavier. That was the harder part. So as long as I stayed patient and just trusted my coach and trusted the process, the cut wasn't going to be too much of an issue. Yeah.
Similarly, I think, because I'm an equipped powerlifter, equipped powerlifting it's a strength sport, but it's more of a skill sport with a strength aspect. And then raw powerlifting, I would say, is a strength sport with a skill aspect. Weightlifting seems to be more similar to equip lifting in that regard, that it is skill that has a strength component. So it's very much about, like you said, if you're not in the right position, you're not getting that snatch. Like doesn't matter how strong you are, if it's out in front of you, that's it. Or if it's not in your center of mass when you land, that's it. How frustrating was it to get those movements down and go through? Because I imagine failure was immense compared to missing squats and stuff. You probably don't miss a lot of squats.
100%. I mean, in training, you'd never really miss any squats or benches. You wouldn't put yourself in that position, or if you did, you had spotters and stuff, and it didn't happen often. It taught me to be okay with failing weightlifting. It was a safer way to fail. I guess you just dump it, you reset, and the training's very different. Powerlifting, you're kind of one and done for your heavy singles, whereas weightlifting, I'd be doing, my coach would program me an AMRAP of 10 singles every minute on the minute, and it's just consistency, keep replicating those reps, and it gets you really good at being okay with failing. But that kind of training also gets you really good at just getting good positions at consistent weights, and it was just about reps. And because I think powerlifting helped me with the strength, but it helped me with having a good tolerance to volume, so I could just spend 2 hours in the gym and snatch really heavy singles just over and over and over again, and it wouldn't tax me, because the weight was just so light comparably to what I was used to doing. So training wise, you had to be really mentally okay with failing, but I think that taught me a really good mindset with like trying to be like a goldfish too, where you fail and you've just got to forget about it and just reset and come back to the process and do it again. So I got really good at that.
You need to fix.
Exactly right. Yeah, I did that wrong. Do this right this time. And it got you really good at doing that, which I think is a massive help when it comes to those sort of single sports.
Yeah, I think so too. I know instantly if something's off. And if I miss something in training, it's because I know technically where it went wrong. So what I need to try and fix, or like my coach will help me decipher what that is I need to fix. But you watch so many powerlifters get really, really frustrated when they miss stuff. And it's like, just take a step back, understand why you missed it. I think we can learn stuff from those more technical sports. Strongman's the same. It's really technical. You're watching people trying to, split jerk logs. And get frustrated when they keep missing it. And it's like, it's a log for one. And if it's out of your center of mass, like it's just so much bigger. And you're getting frustrated. It's like, well, you got to just back the weight down and work on the technicality of the movement.
And like you were just saying, like skill sport or whether it's powerlifting, like a large part of, I think, what a lot of people miss when they get more beyond that intermediate, potential is just your mindset. Like you need to train your mindset to be okay with failing and how you come back from that. There's going to be things that happen in any sport where it's like, things are out of your control. What are you going to do about it? You might get a bad call, but how can you make it as convincing as you can so that doesn't happen again? And I think a lot of the time it's really easy to, when you're frustrated and you miss something, you want to blame something else, but you've just got to bite your tongue and go, this is what I need to be accountable for. This is how I'm going to fix it. And I'm going to forget about that. And I think my partner was awesome through my whole powerlifting and weightlifting career. And he was a big facilitator of, we're going to do the competition. And then when you have frustrations and things you want to self-reflect on, we're going to do that at the pub tonight. We're not going to do it when you're here. And I remember it was an intentional thing we would try and train, is like my mindset of doing some imagery before I go out, some positive self-talk. Early on, if I said anything negative, I'd get a slap across the head and be like, snap out of it. Like, you're not saying that. No, like this is what you're going to focus on. And really quickly, it becomes a really positive mindset where you do see other people chucking tantrums, whinging about refs, whinging about their foot slip because of X. And, you know, if you can just go in there with a clear head, know your process, and if something goes wrong, it's because I stuffed up, like you come out feeling so much more accomplished and results come out as well. So, yeah.
I think that is, and given that you've performed at the level that you've performed at, I think it's very good for anyone listening who might be that person that does get frustrated at bad calls, or like something being, you know, the platform's a bit slippery or this, that, and the other. It's something you have to adjust to, because you, like, they can't necessarily, they can do their best, but you can't control everything. So, and neither can you. So when you're at a competition, focusing on the things that you can control and fixing how you can adjust around it. Like my foot has slipped. I bench with my feet out wide and flat, and we don't use carpet like you do in the NPA and WP and IPF. So it's not very grippy. Sometimes you're on a slick bit of mat. And when I'm pushing, especially in a bench shirt, I've had my foot slip more times than I care to think about. But what I've done is change my foot position so I don't slip anymore.
Exactly.
And it's taken probably 2 years to figure out where that is. But I'm not getting up and going, fucking foot slipped, fucking, you know, the mat's slippery, like, and chucking a big hissy fit about it.
100%.
It's not their fault.
No.
I should just adjust with it. So,
and that's it. Powerlifting, there's not many variables with it. It's a pretty basic sport. And I think at the end of the day, even with, you know, things like depth calls or bench press calls and lockout calls, I'm like, if you can just do the lift really convincingly, there's going to be less chance for a bad call to be made. So at the end of the day, if you're giving a 50-50 lift, you get a 50-50 call, and we're human. That's how they're seeing it. And I'm really lucky in that my training was always really convincing. I don't think I ever got done on a lift on a technicality. It was only ever if I failed it or I got it. And I think that's the best way to be, because you know that's your true strength and you're following what you need to do.
Yeah, one thing you see often is bench calls. People get frustrated that they're long. It's like, well, I always tell my lifters you should pay attention to the benches before you and see what the calls are looking like.
Yep.
Because you can really gauge what you're going to be in for. But then if you get a long one, that's on you, because obviously the bar's not stationary enough to get a press call. So you need to control the bar more.
100%. And if you've been training that way, it's not going to be a problem too. So I think it does come back to being a bit more disciplined in training to make sure you're meeting those requirements. So it's not a shock if you turn up one day and they're a little stricter, you know, on the calls or on the depth, and you're kind of happy to go there and push it. So yeah, I agree.
You should be able to adapt to the needs of the sport.
100%.
So when you were training for powerlifting, what did your training look like? Did you kind of train the same way the whole time?
Pretty similarly. Dean Storm was a great coach for me. He programmed quite different to a lot of powerlifters. It wasn't really specific, just SBD, you know, and I think that's a really, like when you do the coaching courses with Rob Wilkes and that, it's kind of like the classic periodized way you're taught is to kind of squat, bench, deadlift, one or two accessories. My programs were always very variable. I had a lot of variety with different exercises in there. Our goal was just to keep me globally as strong as possible, and the specificity of the lifts will just come with time. So I had a lot of back issues for me going through as a powerlifter. So funny me, deadlift being the best lift, it was probably the one that caused me the most pain in my whole like career of powerlifting. And I was a conventional deadlifter when I first started, and did my back really bad when I first started competing. And I was away from a bar for 12 months, just, you know, machine belt squatting and goblet squatting because it was really bad. And then I did convert over to sumo, which helped a lot. But I guess just with that type of training, you've got to be open to doing different stuff if you get hurt. And even then it builds a stronger base. So I do think that's why I probably had not too hard of a journey switching to weightlifting, was because we were already doing, like I said, front squat positions, overhead positions in my general prep stuff. And even as a physio, that stuff I love to like preach to other coaches and athletes is if athletes are getting really jammed up, they need to move outside those positions. And one, it's enjoyment. Two, it's good for movement for the body, and it just keeps your wholly really strong. So yeah.
That's one thing. One of my clients who saw you, who was feeling quite jammed up in the scapula and stuff like that, and his lats were a bit tight, and he came back and said, "Oh, Jess said I need to overhead press," and I'm like, "Do you know why she said that?" Like I can see why potentially, but he's like, "Oh, I don't know. She just said I had to do it." I'm like, "Oh, okay." And then he came back to you and he said, "Why do I need to overhead press?" And he said that to me. I'm like, "Okay, cool. We'll add it in."
Yeah, cool.
You know, I like that conversation between. I found that being up here that a lot of the fears, like with our gym, we've got 2 physio clinics that we work with directly,
Mhm.
and obviously outside of that, like a bunch of our lifters come to you as well, and it's very good to have that open communication between coach and physio, where it's just not like, well, coach is telling me this and physio is telling me this. It's like, let's talk.
Work together. Yeah.
I always defer to what the physio says, because ultimately you're the top of the pyramid in terms of rehab there. So it's like, well, this is wrong, so this is what I need to do to fix it. It's okay. Come back to the coach, and the coach can go, okay, this is what we can use to fix that.
Mhm.
Let's add it in. But if that communication's closed, then it goes nowhere.
100%. And I'm sure we'll get to it. But yeah, as a therapist, that's one of my most important things is if I'm treating athletes, like I need to talk to the coach about why I'm telling them to do something, because there's no point, like you said, them turning up to the gym and doing this stuff and the coach going, that's not your usual warm up, or I haven't programmed that. And like I said, knowing why is so important for everyone. It's not just, me who needs to know, the athlete needs to know to invest in it. The coach needs to know how to work around it. And also knowing where the line's drawn as well, making sure as a therapist, I'm not their coach. That's my responsibility to chat to the coach and go, this is what I'd recommend based on what I'm seeing, but, here's some examples of what I might do, but I'll leave it to you, and it's really important not to go and, program for them or, tell them what they should be doing. Don't worry about your coach, he's an idiot. That's definitely not acceptable and not what we're about. So, yeah.
As a form, because you don't coach anymore necessarily, but you were a strength coach. When you coached, did you predominantly coach powerlifters?
Yeah, mainly. Yeah, it was always generally powerlifting, and it was just because I think at the time when I was a strength coach, that was my main investment was with myself was powerlifting.
That would give you an edge too, being a therapist. I think that you can. I think a lesser person might view that as, like you said, the coach is an idiot. I know better, but you can see that the coach has an overarching goal that you're a part of.
Mhm.
So therefore, you need to fit in, and you can kind of recognize that as a therapist, where you don't go, that old school mentality where it's like, just stop lifting
Yeah,
and just rest. It's like, no, you got to lift through it.
that hurts. Yeah.
I know you're big on that as a therapist, but so going back to programming stuff, when you were working with Dean,
Mm.
where's Dean based?
He's actually not coaching anymore. He's got a slightly different IT gig now, but
Okay.
he was based out not far from Maitland,
Oh,
out
okay.
that way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Okay. Being new to the area, there's like the older crowd. I don't know unless they're still around. So I like to try and put all the pieces together. But
Yeah, fair.
so when you moved into weightlifting and Simon was coaching you, what did the weightlifting training look like?
Um, Again, just a lot of different movements, not really any like fixed barbell strength movements. It was definitely more just building up a technical efficiency to one, get moving, and two, be able to get a bar overhead comfortably.
Yeah.
The focus, like you said before, strength doesn't go anywhere. Like you never lose it. So for us, it was we could take a bit of time away from heavy squats and heavy pulls and things and probably invest more time in just snatching, just cleaning, just jerking. And it was a lot of AMRAPs of every minute on the minute of you're doing 2 hours of, 50 reps of snatch and you're going to do another one every time you miss one. And
Yeah.
it was just repetition and it was just developing a new movement pattern.
Would you break the lifts down into segments? Like I see that a lot in weightlifting, where you're breaking it down into, you're just doing the pull, you're just doing the clean, and then you're working on jerks from blocks and stuff like that. Did you do a lot of that, or was it like a lot of full range, or a good mix of both?
It depended where I trained. So when I was at home or at gyms around home, we didn't have the same access to blocks and stuff. So I never got to jerk off blocks a whole lot until a bit later. But yeah, definitely the snatch and the clean got broken up. A lot of positions from the hip because it's a lot easier. In weightlifting, the pull, that first pull from the ground is actually a really hard component of the lift. And I think doing powerlifting for so long, you get stuck into wanting to protract and be really forward as a puller, but you actually have to be the opposite and you have to just be in different positions. So it was a long time teaching that motor pattern of, okay, this isn't a conventional deadlift, this is a clean, it's very different. So it was really good for me to break that down and get really good at the hip, get really good at the knee, and then eventually work down to the ground.
Was it a difficult transition going from that, like, in a weightlifting pull, you're going to be a slightly more posterior tilt. You're pulling with your chest up. It's a lot different. And you're leading with the hips, because then you're thrusting at the hips once it gets there. Whereas in powerlifting, you're not necessarily, like, it's almost the opposite. Was that a hard transition to make?
Oh, heaps, heaps. Because at the end of the day, like I'd look at Simon and go, mate, I can deadlift double this. Like, just let me pull it the way I want to pull it. And he's like, you won't get it up there if you pull it that way. And it used to be funny because my first 2 years of weightlifting, my arms would be really bent in my pulls and I'm pulling from the biceps to try and clean it up. And because that felt strongest, I didn't know how to relax through the arm and trust my back.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was a really hard transition, was retracting, trusting the lats to hold tight instead of trying to bicep curl everything because that's what felt strong. And then even just transitioning, pulling in heels versus in flats, it was just a really bizarre change in center of mass. And yeah, there were a lot of different variables that were tricky about it, but the weight was light for so long that it just, with practice, it slowly got there. So
yeah. I've gone far down the rabbit hole of weightlifting. I don't think I'm necessarily built for it, but and I like to branch out into lots of different things of training, but I'm so focused on equip lifting that's such a big, almost a black hole of adventure that I can't be distracted necessarily. But there has been times where I've played with those movements, and even just like to be proficient enough to then teach a basic version of it to someone if it's going to be useful. But it's very hard.
it's really hard. I think the best place to start with weightlifting is get really good at front squats,
Yeah.
like in getting that front rack position. Get really good at just behind the head pressing,
Yeah.
and even overhead pressing, but behind the head pressing, and just getting comfortable in split positions. So a lot of my training would have been, front squats, overhead squats, snatch balances when you start behind and just pop under,
Yeah.
and just practicing catching with a weight above your head, and before you even think about going too heavy with those other positions, because it is complicated and it's scary when you're not used to moving weight above your head.
Well, especially if you watch powerlifters transition, and I've actually got a friend who's transitioning from powerlifting to weightlifting at the moment, and just that ability to drop and catch is kind of the biggest thing that I'm seeing her struggle with.
Yep.
She's getting a lot better, but I can just how slow that transition from being so static and rigid to being dynamic and fluid is very hard transition to make if it doesn't come naturally, I think.
It's a combination of, I think, confidence and speed.
Yeah.
Like I think at powerlifters, we're slow, we're strong, we're not powerful at all. Like we're really just like trying to like be really good at yielding weight and then just driving hard. Whereas weightlifting, you've just got to pop, and it is a really different sport. And if you don't have the mobility when you first transfer over to, like you are going to be a lot slower because you're wondering, am I even going to get into this position or am I going to have to dump it? So I think once you get the confidence of doing it, it does get a lot quicker really quickly.
Yeah. Do you think that being sporty younger has helped you make that transition a bit more seamless?
Yeah, massively. Before I even got into powerlifting, like karate was my big sport, and I was like my first national championships with karate was back in 2005, and so from a really young age, I was competing and karate, a lot of mobility. Like I was in a sport where a lot of the girls would come out and they'd come and hit you as hard as they can the first time because that would just intimidate you, and you get a little warning kind of thing, and then so you had to get really good at mindset with not losing your shit at sometimes with people, but also just keeping calm, collected, being really mobile, being quick. And then I think even from that and a bit of footy over the years, I was always sort of doing stuff that meant, moving quick. And even though I wasn't like the fastest runner, it was always, different positions, I guess. So when I did go through powerlifting, that wasn't my first exposure to repetitive sport or
Yeah.
training. So I do think that helped when I went to weightlifting that I'd had that previous background in being able to get out of those type positions.
And a bit of an indication in your competitiveness. If you took karate to a
100%.
national level, then and it's no doubt that you've kind of had someone suggest that, hey, in 2 years you want to try and qualify for the Commonwealth Games, and you went, yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, karate was, it was such a good sport, I think, to start off being younger and to build that. We spoke about before, like the importance of the mental side of things. Like you've got to keep cool, calm, collected. You can't lose your shit. Things happen very quickly. It's a fighting sport, so you have to, like I said, there's just so many aspects to it and decisions that are in and out of your control. And I think from a really young age, doing that from 10, and then I represented Australia a couple of times for it. And then I remember I just fell off it sort of when I went to move to uni and had a couple of surgeries and stuff, and just got wound up into footy and a bit more of the gym. But yeah, I think it taught a really nice, like just at a young age, a really nice big bulk of like toolbox things that I could use when I got to powerlifting.
Yeah.
It wasn't as unnatural to learn those mindset things.
So you've almost worn the Australian jersey 3 times.
I have, yeah.
So
Yep.
what culminated with your weightlifting journey was a significant rupture in your quad. And that was very, very close to the qualifying in Singapore.
Mm-hmm.
That was
Yeah.
5 days before, was it, from memory?
Yeah, less than a week. Yeah.
Yeah, in a clean and jerk.
Yep.
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 What was that like?
Yeah. I have a pretty good pain threshold for bad things. I'm a bit of a sook if I get a paper cut or if someone flicks me or I hit my funny bone. But with bad injuries, I've had a fair few surgeries in the past, pretty bad injuries, and it's a good and a bad thing in that I don't fear things. So with footy, I was always the head down and I'd be the one who would just try and chop people and I'd come out second best, but it didn't bother me. Or like weightlifting, it was kind of like I never had that issue not being able to drop under a bar. I'd just do it. And if it fell on me, it'd be, oh, it's all right. I'll just go do it again. And I think with that, it was a tricky one where there was just a lot of stress building up. It was the big weight cut to under 55. It was our last heavy session. I went down to Wollongong. I was just really tired, just fatigued, not recovered. I could just feel it was ready to taper off. It was that last heavy session that I had to get through. And I'd been training for an hour and a half, and Simon had programmed some heavy clean and jerk singles to finish off the last session. We were going to fly it 3 days later. And I was just feeling really good. Like, I mean, for me to qualify convincingly for Birmingham, I needed probably around that 100 kilo clean and jerk, depending on how I snatched. And we were hitting the high 90s in training consistently. So I was really confident on the day. I always compete better than I do train with weightlifting. So I thought, if I'm hitting 95 plus in training, this is awesome. Like, we'll do it. And I remember I had 98 on the bar. I said, put 98 on it. I said, I feel great. Did 95 and it moved really well. And there was nothing wrong with the movement. Like, I caught the clean really nicely, stood it up, popped the jerk up. And I remember just when I caught that split, there was something about the position, just that last lift, and the leg just went pop. I remember dumping it behind me, and in the moment, I didn't really remember much of it. I'd videoed it. So when I watched my reaction, I was like, I don't remember doing that. Like, I was just obviously so full of emotion, but it didn't hurt. And that's what was really conflicting with it. And I think as a therapist, I knew when it happened, something was wrong, but I did at the time a really good job of just distracting myself and convincing myself otherwise. So I remember when it happened, coach heard it and he went, was that your shoulder? And I thought, no, it's my fucking hip. Like, I don't know what I've done. Just walked off, wasn't too sore. And remember I was up the back assessing it myself, doing like straight leg raises and quad extensions. And I was like, oh, that feels okay. Like, that's a bit weird. And then we had to drive back up to Newcastle. And after that 5-hour trip, I couldn't get out of the car. And I was like, all right, this is pretty bad. So just going to put my tinfoil hat on and go, you know what, everything's fine. And I'm just being a sook. And my partner had ruptured his Achilles 3 days before that. So I'm like, I'm just being a hypochondriac. I didn't hear anything. I didn't feel anything. You're being a sook. And yeah, it surprisingly, I think being a rupture, it didn't hurt. It just shocked me. And obviously it gave way. And when I watched the footage back after the comp, I sort of noticed, okay, watching that, there was definitely something that went wrong. But yeah, it was pretty full on.
And so you still went to comp.
Yep.
And you still put up a pretty decent total.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that when you clean and jerked 97 in that comp?
No, so I did I PB'd my snatch, which was funny. So that was the 77. But I ended up clean and jerking 90. So it was significantly less, but the impacted lift was the jerk. I couldn't split jerk. My rec fem had avulsed, and had retracted 9 centimeters down my thigh. So the main thing with that is in a split jerk, it was my back leg, and the rec fem's job is to stabilize the hip with the thigh. So as soon as you don't have your rec fem there, you don't have anything to stabilize your back leg. So it felt like, I guess after that happened, I knew it was bad enough that I didn't train for the 5 days leading into comp, which was weird for me. I always train day before. So I had to just trust the strength, trust the process, turn up on the day. We did 2 warm-ups for each lift because it was just so sore. Like, I couldn't do anything, and just had to trust, go out for an opener and just hope that I can do it. And if I don't, that'll be really embarrassing. But I think snatches, because that leg wasn't back, there's something about when things get tough mentally, I'm a lot stronger. And I think that's what really got me over the line with the snatch. With the clean and jerk, I remember I went out and did my opener and I missed my opener. The leg gave way. I got the clean up, and then I went to jerk it and I just fell to the ground and my leg was just so sore. I had like 10 strips of K-tape over it, just trying to hold it together. And I remember I come out the back and the coaches were like, the Australian coaches said, do you want to scrap it? Like, don't worry about it. And I remember looking at them and going, just give me 30 seconds, leave me alone. I whack my head a few times. Come on, like, one lift, go and do it. And got it on the second attempt. But all the weight was in the front leg to just take that pressure off, and tried the 100 after that. And obviously just like, I think at that point I was mentally just put so much into that second lift. There was just no comeback with the third, but it sort of weirdly enough come around okay, considering.
It still it ended up getting you a qualification for Commonwealth Games, but because of the injury, that rendered you uh, disinvited, I guess.
Yeah,
So
so
decided not to take you.
yeah, it was tricky. It was bittersweet because you saw to be definitely guaranteed a spot with Commonwealth Games Australia, you had to be ranked top six with the Oceania or with the Commonwealth. And with me, with what I posted, I ranked seventh, but everyone in the top 10 is given a game spot. So it's up to the country whether they send you or not. So I was given a game spot, which having your name highlighted there being like, you've earned a game spot, you go, you beauty. Like now this is just up to Commonwealth Games Australia and Weightlifting Australia. And the main thing was Weightlifting Australia had to go away and put their heads together and go, you know, is she going to be podium potential? If not, is it worth spending $50,000 on her to go to Birmingham? And I think I tried to use the quad as a good reason to send me because I'm like, look how mentally resilient I am. If I can do this with a torn quad, it'll be great when it's intact. And
Yeah.
I think it probably wasn't going to work either way, but they just kind of said, well, that's going to require surgery. That's going to take time. And we don't think, you know, by July, you're going to be able to podium even then. So
Yeah.
we're going to withdraw you. So it was a bit of a kick in the guts, but again, it's not a system fault. I just needed those few extra kilos and didn't get them to convince them. So,
And you end up getting surgery on that.
yep.
How long after doing it did you get surgery?
It was a while. I wanted to wait until that call come out with the team, and that was a couple of months after. I didn't want to act before then, and to be honest, I was willing to leave it and just train through it. And again, just sort of if I did get sent off, just work through it without the surgery.
Yeah. So that 7 centimeters that it retracted, was that over the months before getting it fixed?
That was the MRI when I got back. So yeah, I had the 7 centimeter retraction. I had the before I left, I refused to let anyone look at it. I was like, just leave me alone. No one touch it. No one look at it. I don't want to know. Like better like not knowing because if I knew, I just knew I'd hold back. And as soon as I got back, I had an ultrasound. They're like, that doesn't look great. MRI confirmed that. And then when I caught up with a specialist 2 months later, it had retracted like significantly more as well. So it had shown not good healing because I had just kept training through it in case I were to get picked. But when that call got made, I said, okay, no, you need to reattach that back.
And so getting it reattached, how stiff were you after that? Because that retraction would like end up in significant stiffness once it's reattached. Yeah.
Definitely. It felt tight. The process was probably 8 weeks of healing, but out of all the surgeries I've had, it was the least painful, probably most smooth process I've had. And I don't know if it's because it was just like the bone, like a avulsed off the bone. It wasn't actually the tendon tore. So it's a blessing in that I didn't have to wait for tendon recovery and like healing and have to re-strengthen the muscle. Once they pinned it back there, it felt pretty not I lost strength and a bit of muscle, but it wasn't as bad as what I was expecting. It was probably 6 to 8 weeks, and then I started weaning back into movements, and from there it come around pretty quickly. So it was a pretty good recovery.
Yep. And so through all of this time, as we've kind of I'd said at the start, and you've alluded to throughout this, you're a physiotherapist. You have a doctorate degree, which we've discussed the difference of that. But you were doing all of this prior. So you started off with an exercise science degree. And when did you move into physiotherapy?
Yeah, cool. So I did exercise science in Bathurst at CSU from 2012 to 2014. I applied for a postgrad position at the AIS at the time. It was just like a program that they run similar to like a traineeship for 12 months. Come into the institute, stay in Canberra for 12 months, learn off the best. And it was a paid position. So I transitioned into that for a year in physiology. So a lot of sports testing, athlete testing, lab and field, and that was predominantly my area. And I loved it. And I honestly thought I was going to stay there. I thought I'll stay in Canberra. I'll do a PhD here. I'll research. I'll work with athletes. This is a dream job. And that was 2016. I did that. And it was at the time I was completing a master's of high performance sport distance. So I was able to sort of do a couple of things. But the biggest thing was I thought I was going to work with athletes up until that point. And I love working with athletes. But the issue is it's not secure as a job. And when I was there 2016, if you remember, that's Rio, and that's when we went really poorly at the Olympics and we really underscored the medal tally that was projected. And I saw everyone lose their jobs, you know, and I thought I was on a 12-month contract. I knew I was probably going to finish up, but you had all these CEOs and directors of sport and all my bosses all be told, you know, end of year, you guys are going to be packing your bags and looking for a new gig. And that was a bit of a wake up call for me to go, okay, you know, in 10 years when I have a family, I don't want to be that guy. That's pretty full on to be told, you know, go back to WA and find a job. So yeah, for me, it was kind of like, okay, I really love this work, but will I love it in 10 years if I have to get the boot and get moved on? And I think that's the real, like the realism of working in high performance sport is you're not secure where you are. Your job's never going to be stable and you have to be on the go. And I did that for a long time. And I just think, as I decided I was wanting to probably settle down with Brad, my partner, and looked to things in the future, it probably wasn't a sustainable job.
Yeah.
And that's when I probably considered more so, oh, I should probably bridge into something where I have more decision and more power over what I'm doing. And yeah, physio was probably the next best thing, where it was all about movement and injuries. And with my own issues, I thought, oh, this will be really nice to tie into what I already know and my skill set.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, so once I finished up in Canberra, I moved to Sydney and did that.
And so, as we discussed kind of off air before this, you the level you have is between a master's and a PhD.
Yep.
So it's a doctorate degree.
Yes.
Does that mean we should be calling you Dr. Jess?
Yeah, technically we can. Yeah. My partner hates it because he's got a PhD. And like I said, it's like on a scale of like level 1 to 12, a PhD is level 12, a master's is level 10, and my doctor degree sits at a level 11. So every time I pull out the I'm a Doctor 2 card, I'm as good as you, he reminds me very quickly I'm a level 11, not a level 12. But yeah, it's just that tier under.
Okay. And so what's apart from the tiered system, what's the difference in the kind of real world application of?
Not much, to be honest. Like in terms of what I do, my degree was a combination of theory and when I say theory, like coursework and also a thesis. The thesis didn't last 3 to 4 years. That's probably the biggest difference. My thesis was a really condensed 12-month project with the coursework on the side, and a lot of placement, obviously, to get competent with physio. So to be honest, in terms of a medical degree, I found it really, to be honest, really nice, because I got the best of both worlds. I got to, learn all this coursework, become a physio, be able to be pretty qualified and know what I'm doing coming out of as a grad, but also got that thesis component to it as well, to see if academia was something I wanted. And it kind of tied the knot nicely with being able to do both versus just having to pick coursework or just the thesis. So yeah, it was a nice degree.
So you practice in a private practice now.
Yep.
So once you got your doctorate degree and moved into that, what did that transition look like? Have you've worked at a couple of places now before where you've ended up currently?
Mm-hmm.
How was that transition, and do you feel like you've made, I guess, the right decision in terms of job security and future predictions?
Yeah, I do think so. I think initially when I moved out, when I was doing uni, I always thought, oh, I'll go into hospital rehab. Like I love working with stroke patients and spinal cord patients. Like I loved working with like your para athletes, and always loved working with spinal cords and strokes. And just the rehab process was really rewarding in those placements when I did them. And I just knew a few people who I'd worked with on a strength basis in the past who were spinal cord or cerebral palsy. And I thought, oh, the neurological stuff is so cool. Like I want to do that. And I got my first job at PB Physio down in Sydney, and I met Pay, who was a powerlifter at the time, and Julia, and they convinced me and twisted my arm to come to private practice. They said, why don't you want to do private practice for? And I said, well, I love neurophysio, but I'm not going to be good enough to be a clinical physio. That shit's way too hard. It's too overwhelming. And they just would roll their eyes at me and go, just give us 6 months. If you hate it, like 6 months with us, leave, go back to neuro. Like 6 months, you'll be able to still go back over. And they gave me a job, gave me an opportunity, took me under their wing, taught me everything they knew. The beauty about that clinic in Sydney was they looked after lifters. They're lifters themselves. Their motto was always trying to stop the athlete from retiring, not on their terms. And I really resonated with that and loved it. And yeah, I just learnt from guys that were so used to treating athletes. It wasn't like a normal clinic where it was general pop, arthritic knees. It was always a lifting knee or a lifting shoulder or a lifting back. And that probably really was helpful initially, because like that stemmed into what I loved, and then also wasn't super overwhelming, because as a clinician, if I felt like I fell off on my physio skills, I could fall back on at least giving, tips and tricks around like cueing and like technique and how that might be affecting their injuries. So it was a good safeguard to bridge into clinical work. And then when I moved up here, it was just nice that I'd built that foundation thanks to those guys and had those mentors that I could continue sort of assessing that way, and just ongoing PD and just getting better and building that toolbox.
And so in terms of the clients, patients you would see now, is it a bit of a vast swath of everyone?
Yeah, to be honest, I'm pretty lucky in that my diary is busy enough that I usually only see the guys that usually specifically request to see me, or they're guys that I'm currently seeing. So usually the lifters and the local ones in particular. Still some telehealth stuff too from COVID. We do a lot of online physio sessions, which people usually laugh at, but it's all about coaching people through how to assess themselves, and like watching what they're doing versus having to feel, and just providing them self-management tools, and being able to still do that today is pretty cool. But yeah, a lot of it's lifters still. Every now and again, I'll get someone who's, a friend's referred them for a sore knee and that, which is a breath of fresh air.
Yeah.
But a lot of my job now is a bit hybrid as well. So I do a few days a week out at the mines working on site with those guys and doing pre-injury like clinics and stuff like that. So I do find physio's got a high burnout rate. It's a hard gig. You're seeing, 50 to 60 people a week. Everyone's usually in pain. It can get really emotionally taxing and just mentally taxing. And I think just having that break in my day where now I see a different population on the side makes me love training my lifters more when I do it. So it's nice to have a bit of a flexible, arrangement with that.
Well, I guess similarly to talking about how you trained, and it's like the variety is the spice of life in training, doing the same thing all the time. The skill will come, and it's like you've got the same thing in your practice. Now you're seeing a bit of everyone, but you've got this speciality that you've kind of honed in on, which is, people seek you out for that. So how did you then come to get involved with the Paralympic powerlifting team?
It's a tongue twister.
So many
Simon is a big thanks for that, and like
Yeah.
I haven't given him enough kudos. Like he's done so much for me the last few years with like committing to weightlifting through the whole journey. I was like the first athlete he'd ever coached as a proper weightlifter, and we were a bit of an experiment together with each other, and we worked through like how to learn what the rules are or how to do a comp, and we did all that together and got just like a really good friendship out of that whole process. And he would just drop everything for me and vice versa. If he needed any help in terms of athletes for him, like I would always drop something for him. We still work together actively now with Samtech. So we've got a really good bond just beyond other things other than weightlifting too. And yeah, he's such a good friend of mine. And yeah, I guess with coming into more, like the Paralympic stuff, there was a spot that opened up. So their physio in the past had just kind of sort of moved on with more family stuff and was less committed to certain events. And he just said, look, we're looking for a physio, we're looking for a team manager, and I'm looking for an assistant coach. You tick all three boxes.
Yeah.
It's like, do you want to jump on? It's hard to find all three of those things in one. So yeah, it was like about a year ago, and he said, do you want to come and help me out with the guys? A bit more over that now. And I said, yeah, let's love working with para athletes. I work with them all the time in the clinic. Love the neurological stuff, but any kind of para sport. And a few friends of mine are quadriplegics, and I'm like, just want to be surrounded by those kind of athletes. They're just so rewarding to work with, and they've just got a different kind of mindset, and it's just really nice. So yeah, I was just really lucky to have him as a network, but me also I'll tick the boxes, I guess, to be convincing to have on board.
Right. So you're not just the physio, you're ticking a few hats there.
Ticking a couple.
And so what does your job look like in general, and how does that kind of translate when they go to the competitions or games or travel? Do you go with them on everything?
Yeah, it's tricky. So parasport's a bit different to able body. They don't have the same opportunities still.
Sure.
It's definitely improving, and it
Yeah.
has over the last sort of, I guess, like the last 4 years. But there's still a lack of funding and a lack of access for those guys. Unlike able body, these guys are all in different states. They're not all together. They all train in their own gyms with their own equipment, with their own coaches. So Simon is the head coach. He'll overlook all what they're doing and usually touch base pretty regularly.
Yep.
And he coaches personally 2 of them, but the rest of them kind of have their own coaches, and he's just touching base if they get selected for an event. And we're just monitoring how they're going in the lead up. So it's definitely not a full-time gig in any sense. It's very much a part-time gig. But it's pretty cool because it's a small group, about a dozen guys that sort of come in and out, guys and girls who come in and out of the team. And it's just about, if there's events coming up in that calendar year, touching base, is there anything either of us can provide externally? And then when big events do come up, the big international ones, we both generally are lucky enough to go. Simon's always been the guy that goes. And it's just been awesome that in the last couple of years, there's been a bit more funding to be able to have me there to, one, help him as a coach, but 2, be there as a physio for them. Which has been really cool. So I think it just comes with funding with sport, where you get those opportunities, the more you have funding, but to get funding, you have to perform. So it's all about how can we just keep feeding into that cycle of getting more medals, to get more money, to get more opportunities for everyone, and to have those guys have a better experience.
How does the Australian team shape up on the world stage?
We don't do too bad. So I think like in previous years, our last successful, like really stint in para-powerlifting was 2000, where we had some top tier like Commonwealth Games medalists.
Yep.
Olympics, we've never really been able to stage like solid numbers or solid teams because we're not competitive internationally. But hopefully that's going to change this year. We're hoping to have 1 or 2 athletes qualify for Paris, which qualification period ends end of June. So it's quite close. So we won't know for sure until that last qualifying comp. But we should have 1, hopefully 2 go, which will be the first time in a very long time we've had people represent Australia at that level. But last year, both Hani and Ben, male and female, both got bronze at the Commonwealth Games, which was a massive reason why we've had a bit more funding thrown our direction.
Sure. And so to anyone listening who is not familiar with para-powerlifting, it's bench only. And it is a big bench where your legs are tied down regardless of whether you can move your legs or not. Is that true? So how would you define it compared to, like, beyond that? What would be the definition and the differences that you see?
There's no actual press call. The other thing is they're pressing themselves, but to their discretion, the bar has to be motionless on their chest before they can sequence that press themselves. So they get a start and a rack call. The tricky thing that people don't know about para-powerlifting is it's a lot harder coach than normal bench. So that bar has to remain parallel the entire lift. So if there's any deviation in their arms on the way down or on the way up, it's a no lift for them. It's a sequence no lift, and it's a press no lift on the way up if they're pressing uneven. So they do have to keep pretty stable and solid throughout, which makes it really hard for the guys with neurological issues where, they're a bit, ataxic or a bit shaky. But the rules it's refereed very strictly. If you were to watch it and see red lights, you'd go, what is that for? Like, you definitely have to know the rules, but it's pretty phenomenal what they can do with that weight.
What is the main reason for that strictness?
I'm not sure. That's a good question. I think it's good just because it keeps the playing field pretty level in that what the expectation is. There's, impairments that are beyond neurological issues too. A lot of good para-powerlifters are either amputees below, like lower limb amputees or short stature. And that's because they don't have that neurological, impairment where that affects their coordination or strength. So usually they're the athletes that we're always looking to like scout and help out because they have a good potential. But in saying that, we have a guy now who's like got cerebral palsy and he's just so strong. Like, it's just funny to see, what they can put together on the bench. And it's just that training to specificity. Like you've just got to practice it over and over again. It takes a long time.
Yeah. And so as an assistant coach, and obviously they've all mainly got their own coaches, and as you said, Simon coaches a couple. What does their training look like?
It's a lot of benching, as you'd imagine. A lot of them are just, spending a lot of time on the para bench. And you mentioned before, like you can strap down, you don't have to strap down. It's up to you. But the legs have to stay long and straight. You're not allowed to bend them up, and your bum can't leave the bench, and all those sort of same rules apply. But they're mainly benching on the para bench. They're getting good at para benching. They've all got accessories and things to do as well, but a lot of them are training between 3 and 5 days a week, and they're predominantly that time benching.
Yeah, awesome. I would imagine it would be somewhat beneficial to be strapped in. Have you tried it?
I've tried both. Yeah, we went to Dubai last year and we had a bit of a window, so I'm all mucking around. I'm like, let's try it. I just want to see the difference. And like, even from, I have full functioning limbs, so I guess it's different for me, but you can absolutely push. Like if you know how to use a strap well, you can push through it. So I think when people, for me, opt shouldn't I always personally feel like, a strap's going to really help you. You're going to learn to drive into it. But for some reason, some people just don't feel like they need it. And that's also, I guess everyone each to their own, what they feel comfortable with. But the straps are really good help. I know when I've done it in the past, and if you don't have full control of your leg going to kick out, it's really helpful to lock the leg down.
I do a lot of floor pressing in my training. And one thing that I do with floor pressing is my legs are always flat. And much like a Larson press, you're taking a vast swath of the control of the bench press out of your control. But the floor press is kind of my only real reference for it. We do have a para bench at Hunter Strength, though.
Very cool.
Which doesn't get a lot of use, but it is there and free to use for anyone that comes in. If you're listening and you're a para bencher, Hunter Strength and Performance. But it's like one of those things is your legs want to kick, and if you've got something to push into, I imagine that'll be advantageous. But you know, each to their own, I guess.
Yeah, 100%.
I actually coach an adaptive athlete in strongman, and he was looking at getting into para benching because he would qualify in terms of his disability would allow him to qualify to compete in that. And he went through the process of contacting Powerlifting Australia and talking about what the process looks like, and decided that it wasn't for him once he saw the numbers he was up against.
They're big. I think 20 years ago, we'd look at the numbers and you go, oh, anyone who's a para athlete, you'll go to the Olympics.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big misconception these days is people go, oh, I've got an impairment. And without looking at the numbers, you go, oh, I'll go to the Paralympics one day. And these days you look at those numbers and what you have to bench is ridiculous. It's
they're big benches.
They're big boys. They're big girls and boys who are benching a lot of weight. So
if you're listening to this and you've not seen powerlifting and para benching, go and check it out because they are some of the strongest benches you'll ever see.
Yep.
It's very impressive. So getting involved in that, I imagine, is immensely rewarding, just on a personal level. If you enjoy that sort of work, just being around the mindset of people, like you said, they're a different breed.
Yeah.
What is the main difference you see between the para athletes and normal athletes?
They're really grateful for what they're given in terms of opportunity. And I think that's because they're so used to not being given and handed things that when they're given opportunity, it means the world to them, and deservingly so. Like, they have to work really hard for what opportunity they do get compared to a lot of able-bodied. I worked at the Institute for a year, and like I said, I saw the difference. Even then I was working with the para swimmers, but also like the Opals and the Centre of Excellence football guys. So I had a mix of, I guess like athletes I was looking after there, and even seeing the difference with what, one team was getting versus the paras. And you just think they have to work so much harder to get what they, the able bodies do get. So I think that appreciation for what they get is definitely there. There's not an entitlement to what they get. It's what they deserve, and they know that.
Yeah.
And I love that mindset. It's just, there's no entitlement. There's no real ego in like a negative sense. It's very like, I'm working hard and what I get is what I deserve, and I'm determined to do it. Yeah.
That's if you're listening to this and you can hear the chaos in the background, it's like the guys are going to town today, but I imagine Jacob will filter this out. But yeah, the boys downstairs are they had KFC for lunch and they're going to town. It's like they've turned everything on at once and just having a party. That kind of gratitude mindset is a really interesting one. I think it's something that we can learn as able-bodied people, just anybody.
Yeah.
If you're not grateful for the opportunities you get from the work that you put in, then you're kind of missing the boat, I think.
Yeah.
Like, if you're expecting that you deserve something because of the work you put in, that's a little bit different to going, okay, I deserve to be here because I've worked really hard, but being grateful for it at the same time. Yeah. That's very interesting, very powerful kind of mindset to look at.
I noticed that, and also even to do with like, I guess just for them, like when they're performing, it's very much like, these guys are battling, ongoing medical things. It's not like they've had a medical diagnosis and they're all good now. They get infections regularly. They get sick really regularly. I've had, one guy come into a comp recently with a really bad swollen shoulder, and just their mindset to injuries is so different too, because it comes back to that gratitude and that resilience of, this is just a rock in the road and I've just got to suck it up and do it. And I think a lot of able-bodied lifters can learn a lot from that, is just being, this is what's being thrown at me and I just have to work around it and do what I can. So they're really good at that.
Yeah. I imagine, what are some of the most common things that you see? Like, obviously, without being specific on who and whatever, but in terms of the sport-related injuries in powerlifting, obviously I would say a lot of shoulder stuff going on, because it's all upper body.
Yep.
So is that the main kind of injuries that you'll see, and flare-ups and stuff like that?
Shoulders massively, just like sport specific wise, like usually in just like an overuse repetitive thing too. So it might be some rotator cuff pathology related stuff because they're just corking, because they're doing so much benching. It might be a volume thing where they've changed and flared up. Necks as well, from always being so like retracted into the bench. I've got a couple of guys who've had like when traveling too, and then having to bench back up when they get into training. Fair bit of like really yucky neck pathology stuff as well. A lot of stiffness. And then their own stuff as well. Like if they've got different impairments or conditions, they'll have their own little battles of stuff that they're having to work around lower body or elsewhere. But for bench specifically, shoulders, and wrists.
And what sort of numbers are the Australian guys putting up,
They're
guys and girls?
putting up some pretty good numbers. So we've got Hani Watson, who should be qualifying for Paris, we're hoping. And she's ranked they have to be ranked top 10 to get a ticket to Paris and the world, which is a pretty big achievement.
Yeah.
And so I think at her recent comp, she benched in the low 130s, which is pretty impressive for, I think she's 87 kilos, or the over 87 kilo category.
Yeah.
So pretty big numbers. And then Ben Wright was our other guy who we're hoping, pulls through and pulls some big numbers out, but he's benching very close to 200 at around that, 80 kilo mark. So it's some pretty good weight. And when you look internationally and you're looking at the numbers though, it's just unbelievable seeing what some of them are doing.
Oh yeah. Last Olympics, or last time I saw it on telly, I was just like, what?
And then when you take into consideration how strict the rules are too, you just go, okay, no feet. They're not allowed to deviate with the bar and they're still pressing that. That's pretty cool.
And so on that strictness of rules, how are they in general, because it's so strict? If you're getting red lights, is there a lot of frustration?
No, they're really good at being accountable with it. There's always a look and like, oh, what's that for? And then once you get the reason, it's kind of like off you go, and I've compared to able-body, I've never out in the back ever seen like, tantrums or like whinging or like they're very accountable and like, okay, we just got to do this better. I think everyone's too really supportive. A lot of these comps, even though they're international meets that we're going to overseas, you still get athletes that are relatively new to the sport. And Simon is just so good at like going and, chatting to other athletes and coaches who might not be sure what the calls are for and just talking them through some strategical things to consider. And it was one girl I can remember last year in Dubai who was really struggling to get just her open, and she went out and failed the first two, and it was just because she was jumping off her chest too quick, and the coach and her couldn't work out why she was getting red lighted. And someone had a chat to him and said, trust your strength. If you just sit on the chest for longer than you think you need to, you'll get it. Just sit there for 2 seconds, count to 2, then press. And she went out and got a third one and come back out, and she was just so grateful and like so, just like appreciative of the help. And it was never someone else's fault. It was just like, oh, what should we do here? And again, it's just that gratitude and that accountability.
I think that is really the spirit of powerlifting too, or like any strength sport, any sport really, but powerlifting in general, like I think should be that. You go to novice comps and it's like that. It's like, why does it change when it gets to a national level? And obviously the competition and the stakes are high, but we're not winning millions of dollars. Like it is just a $30 medal and your name on a piece of paper. Like you can help someone out and not be an asshole to everybody on the platform just because stuff went wrong. Exactly. Like mistakes happen, and I think we can all learn a little bit from that mindset of the para-powerlifting team. They're competing at a higher level than we'll probably ever compete at. So they're at the Olympics and the Commonwealth Games too.
Yeah. Yep.
That's, more than we'll ever do. So maybe if they can be gracious in defeat and getting strict calls and stuff not going their way in those circumstances, then maybe at our local meet where we're competing for a podium finish that we're going to guaranteed to get anyway, we're just trying to beat our PBs, maybe we can be a little bit more humble.
100%.
So physio is your main pursuit now. You used to coach, you don't coach so much anymore, or not at all, because obviously you're just physio full time, although you assistant coach.
Yep.
And now you are training for the City to Surf.
Yeah, just for a bit of fun. I'm all about, just like I said, when I'm not necessarily not enjoying something, but just looking for something a bit different, happy to deviate for a bit and then, end up back to probably where I was. But yeah, the running, Brad and I both just started doing park runs regularly end of December just for a bit of fun, and he's very quick and I just sort of plod along. But we both signed up for it thinking it'd be a bit of fun, and just a day out and see if we can run the whole thing without stopping. And August it should be fun.
And through that, you're raising money for the Alopecia Areata support group in New South Wales. And that's because yourself have been diagnosed with alopecia areata.
Yep.
And what did that look like? I know you've posted a lot about this on social media. You've been quite open about it, and it was a particularly challenging time because you didn't know what was happening. And I imagine it'd be very scary that your hair just starts falling out. So what did that kind of look like for you, and what has it? Where are you at now?
It was a weird one. It all kind of happened together for me. So it was kind of when the quad happened and I was making that big weight cut, that I woke up just randomly one day and I had probably like a 50-cent piece coin of missing hair on the top of my head. And I remember I went to work and I noticed it, and I said to a work colleague there, I turned around and said, looks like I've ripped out like a patch of hair out in the middle of the night. Like, what have I done there? I wonder what that is. And he went, oh, it's a bit weird. Like, maybe it's because you're malnutrition, you know, maybe it's just because you're not eating enough. Like, I was quite lean at that point, 2 weeks out from going to Singapore. And I thought, oh, yeah, maybe it's just that. And like, kind of left it as was, you know, it's fine. Never like saw I'd lost hair or anything, just saw the patch. And then I got back and noticed it was getting bigger. I was like, oh, that's a bit weird. Like, God, why? Like, it must be because I'm not eating and I did a bit more research and found, you know, when you Google like, oh, losing round bare patch of hair, what's going on? And that, yeah, alopecia diagnosis popped up on Google. And I thought, I'm not going to Dr. Google this, but that kind of looks like what's going on. And then reading, you know, stress can cause to it, you know, and body inflammation can cause it. And it's a gene that you have and it kind of just gets triggered if one of these things happen. And yeah, it was a tricky one because like you alluded to, like there's not a lot of research behind it. There's not a clear cut answer with it. So when you have it, you don't know if you're going to have more patches. You don't know if that might be the only one. You don't know how long it's going to go for, if it stops, if it keeps going. So there were a lot of questions and uncertainty around it. And I think half of not having control over that makes it harder, in that you just don't know where you're going to end up with it. So I did chase my tail for probably like 18 months with it, spending thousands of dollars on like, you know, cortisone injections to try and re-stimulate the hair, and it would work short term in the patch where I got the injection, but then it would fall out somewhere else. And it was a very expensive venture to try and hold on to something I obviously didn't have control over. And then, yeah, it wasn't until probably I was due to get married October last year, and I really just wanted to try and hold off and have my hair until then and then worry about it afterwards, just because like I'm not too fussed by how I look, but it was just a one less thing to stress about. It would have been nice to have my hair for the day, and it just got to the point where I'd lost 80% of it by that point, and it just got really hard to manage and hide. And I was trying to fill in extensions and things like that, and it would just get to the point where I'd spend hours on the ground in the bathroom picking up my hair, and I think just enough was enough. And I said to Brad sort of just after the wedding, like, we're going to go get the clippers and you're just going to cut what's left off because I've had enough. Like, I just need it gone. I look like I'm a homeless rug rat. It needs to go. And so he had lots of pleasure in just shaving the rest off for me. And to be honest, it was like the best thing I did because I think I held on for long enough, probably could have done it sooner. It was just the wedding that pushed it off. But just being able to let go of that and have that control, miraculously since, yeah, a lot of it's grown back. So I think for me, like the trigger was stress. And once I could let go of not being obsessive over it and like collecting the hair off the ground and worrying about how big patches were, once I just got rid of it, it just seemed to help things re-stimulate. And for me, it has helped a lot. And I still have relapses here and there, still a couple of patches, but I think it's just something I have to learn that I'm just going to have to deal with. And if it falls out again, I'll just rinse and repeat and go again. So it's just hair.
It was interesting because stress can be the trigger, but then you've compounded the stress by being stressed about what's happening.
Yeah.
So you're in this kind of endless cycle of going nowhere, like you're on a hamster wheel, essentially, which is very relatable to many situations that people go through with stress, that
100%.
you end up making the stress of what's happening the stress itself, and then you've just compounded it and made it worse.
100%.
So obviously, when you gave in and shaved it and went, right, fuck it, I've had it, that's a weight off your shoulders that is kind of allowed you to have it come back. And there's a lot growing back, like considering you were completely bald not that long ago.
Yeah, it was October, that I did the shave. So it's been nice to have some hair back on my head. But tell you what, it was pretty low maintenance when it was as short as yours. So I wouldn't mind going back to being cut on a one. But no, it's been really awesome to have it come back.
And so do you think that your mindset that you've developed from being that competitive, hard-nosed kid that is really quite resilient has really kind of shone through in this circumstance where you've had to really, stand up strong and be like, all right, fuck, I need to, or did you let your guard down a bit?
Oh, I think like a bit of a mix. So I think like absolutely, like when it comes to the decision, like I was just at a point where I was like this like has to happen, and like that's just like the reality of what's going on. There's no point, crying about it anymore. Let's just shave it off. Let's just reset. But there were definitely like tears and tantrums on the way through. Why me? This isn't fair. And I think also for me, always seeing a correlation with how hard I work is what I see as a result. no matter how hard I worked or how much money I spent on it, it wasn't getting better. And that was also incredibly frustrating because I'm so used to being in control of my results and me being accountable. And when I felt like I wasn't doing anything wrong or I was doing all the right things and it was still falling out, that was a massive kick in the guts for me and my personality as well. I was just finding myself getting really frustrated. Like, I'm doing everything here, like, and this is still falling out. So I think good and bad in that sense, but definitely when it comes to the decision and just having the really tricky days with it where we'd want to go out and I just like felt like I just looked awful. Even now, like I look like a scruffy homeless person. But I think like it definitely helps to just kind of go, you know what, like it's fine. There are bigger things to worry about. But yeah, there's definitely, I think with anyone going through anything, like there's going to be those days for sure.
Oh, 100%. Like I had this conversation with a very good friend going through a very hard time recently, and saying that people's experiences of stress or depression or hardship are only really what they've ever experienced.
Yeah.
So they might go, oh, I've had a hard life and blah, blah, blah. And to them, that's really the hardest thing they've ever gone through until they go through something harder. So your example of like, I really struggle with people going, well, you have no idea how hard it is for me. It's like, no, well, they don't, but they only understand how hard it is for them. But until you get something that kind of takes over that. But I think you've just shown the lesson you've learned through that is that some relinquishing of control is actually beneficial. So then that helps you alleviate some stress, which then in turn gives you some chance to heal.
100%.
So that's you're doing great. You look great. You don't look like
Thanks,
a
mate.
person. Your hair's. I've been following you for a few years now in terms of like on social media, and when I saw that happen, I didn't quite understand what was happening. I don't think I read what's happening. It was till one of my friends who you see as a client of yours, she told me what was happening. I was like, oh my God, that's, and as I said, I had a friend go through the same thing that was stress related, and it would be very scary because losing control of anything is intimidating. So
super intimidating. I guess like if you can try and find that optimism in it and it's like, but at the end of the day, it's a condition where you're relatively healthy, it just impacts your hair. And I think you've just got to try and like with anything anyone goes through, try and come back to the positives and be optimistic about it and go, well, what's good to come of this? Well, I can raise awareness for this thing and try and get more help and support for other people who are. I remember I was so lucky when the first 6 months where I went through it and I was spiraling in terms of what's going on. Am I going to lose all my hair? Like what's going to happen? And I had this girl reach out to me. When I say girl, like someone in her late 20s go, oh, I had it 4 years ago and I'm in remission now and all my hair's back. But I appreciate these were the emotions I felt. And if you have any questions, just ask. And that was probably one of the most important things to me because I was like, oh, like this is someone who's like actively reaching out who is that life support that you wouldn't have, I guess. And I think it's really important to be that person for other people because it's scary when you first realize what's going on and you don't know what's going to happen. And sometimes just having people of similar experiences, whether it's the exact same thing or just some kind of hardship, it can be nice to have someone just hear and go, I've felt that and that's okay. You'll see the other end of it.
Yeah, I think with any of those things, what it comes back to is feeling isolated.
Yeah.
And if you feel like you're the only person going through it, then no one understands and no one can ever understand. No, I can't express how I feel because no one gets it. And then you have someone come back and go, I get it. And you're like, oh my God, unleash on them. But the greater kind of understanding of that is that you're not alone in anything you're going through. There's someone who's gone through something
exactly
the same or worse or similar or whatever, and putting it out like you did is kind of what got you that kind of reciprocal healing.
100%.
So that's really cool. And so tell me about what you're raising money for and what the Alopecia Areata support group do.
Yeah, cool. So I'm a support leader with Alopecia Areata New South Wales. So we have kind of like team leaders in areas. So I have a group of people in the Central Coast and Newcastle region where I just try to help facilitate whether it's face-to-face catch-ups or whether it's online forums or questions people have, people who've had alopecia for a long time or people who've recently, searched Facebook groups for alopecia and found us and just been funneled into our sort of forums. So it's, again, it's sort of to act like we just spoke about, like that room for people to just talk about like what they're going through. It's really common in kids. So I do find like a lot of the people I'm talking to are parents who don't have it, but the kids are going through school and getting bullied. And we're talking through strategies to work with the schools to mitigate how to, address that for the child. And it's been so rewarding for me to be able to feel like I can talk to other people about it, and selfishly me get something out of it as well, where I feel like, I can relate to these other people as well and think I'm an adult with, I feel very confident about myself and I don't have low, self-esteem or anything like that. But these kids are at school getting bullied, and I just think, it could be so much worse for me. That how could I help these guys, in their situations, but also for me, just like give me some fill in my, I guess, like cup as well with it. So, yeah, I'm pretty lucky in that I get to work closely with them. And then we hold camps and regularly for the kids, and usually the adults will go grab a coffee and just like catch up. And it's, yeah, a nice forum to not feel excluded. So the money would just be going towards, alopecia areata, New South Wales, and it's just towards research. And like I said, just starting to try and put money into working out why it happens. And there's no solid treatments. We've got band-aids, we've got creams and steroids. And I went through a patch where I tried immunosuppressants for a while, and the idea is to suppress the immune system so your hair isn't freaking out and it grows back. And there's just so many poor side effects with doing that. And so, yeah, sometimes coming to the bottom of the actual reason why it's happening would help with a good treatment. So that's always ongoing.
Yeah. Well, and like you said before, the stress around why is this happening to me? Why me? What's causing it? Actually, sometimes just taking that step back and going, stop trying to save it.
Yeah.
Let it go, and then start rebuild from the ground up.
100%.
And it seems to have, given you pause and like the kind of enthusiasm to go forward in a way. So what's the best way to find the support group?
The support groups are all on basically Facebook. We're still pretty old school. So there's an Instagram page with the AAAF, which is Alopecia Areata Australia Foundation. And they do a lot of really cool stuff with just like informative tips and things for people who don't know what alopecia is, which is really cool. And they do a lot of fundraising and sponsorship programs for, in particular, kids with alopecia. But in terms of the actual forums, yeah, Facebook's the best way. There's a New South Wales page, and then there's subgroups, like I said, in different areas depending on where you live. And it's pretty easy to get funneled into one of those groups from the main page. So we're all about just making a really inclusive community feel to it. And like you said, just having someone you can talk to if you have questions.
I can imagine that would be a terribly difficult thing to go through as a kid, like terribly difficult as an adult. Don't get me wrong, but as a kid, if you just the social aspect of it would be horrendous.
And I think
school's hard enough as it is.
Oh, school and as an adult, you can try and piece things together. Like I know the life events that happened for me where it probably tipped it off. And as a child, they just look at mum and dad and go, "Why me? Why don't I look like my other friends at school?" And it does break your heart when you hear them talk about it. But the thing I love is like hearing how awesome the parents are with managing it. And I remember I went to one community group where I was facilitating in a bit, and the parents were all going around the table going, how do you address what the answer is if a kid goes, "Where's your hair gone?" And this little girl would have been like 6 years old and turns around and she says, "My mummy tells me that my hair goes on a holiday sometimes." And like, they're just so adorable and like so positive. So I think they're just, inquisitive and just unsure, but yeah, it would be so hard.
Yeah, it would be. Well, to wrap things up, I encourage anyone who is dealing with that or knows anyone dealing with it, then reach out to Jess or reach out to the support groups. But I want to thank you for coming on today. I think you're an incredibly positive and bright spark in the world of lifting that, that's kind of what always attracts me to people. I like to say why I've invited you on the podcast, but positivity and resilience is like it shines through in kind of what you do. So thank you for being that person, that you put it out into the world, and that, someone like that person that reached out to you and gave you hope, I think can be that for other people. So keep doing what you're doing and being awesome.
Thanks, Rob.
Thanks for coming on. And what's the best way to find you?
Probably Instagram's probably the easiest way. So I'm still, even though with the surname change, still super strong on Instagram. But on Facebook as well as Jess Wright as well. So yeah, regarding anything, always more than happy to chat to anyone. And
Cool. And in terms of the clinic, where if you need physio Therapy. Where are you based, and
Yeah.
how to contact them?
Yes, I'm in Wickham, so at Ethos Health,
Yep.
just a private practice in Newcastle in Wickham. And yeah, usually see a lot of my guys face to face there. And like I said, still do the odd telehealth stuff here and there as well. But yeah, more with the physiotherapy side of things now.
Cool. Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on today. It's awesome to finally meet you, and appreciate the time, and great chat.
Thanks for having me, Rob. I really appreciate it.
You're very welcome. All right, we'll be back again soon. Thanks for watching. Make sure you go show notes and check out our sponsors, and all Jess's information will be in there too. So check her out, check out what she does. She's an awesome light in the darkness of the world. So thanks very much for watching and listening, and we'll see you next time.